Hey everyone, Andrew here, bringing you another video. And today I'd like to sit down and talk a little bit about marriage in comic books, in my opinion on the subject. The key word there is opinion. As with all my sit-down talking blog videos that I do, a lot more recently, it's all just my opinion. You can agree with it or disagree with it. It doesn't really matter. That's the beauty of opinions. You're never right or wrong. It's just how you feel. See, marriage in comic books has been a topic, an issue that I've been thinking a lot about lately, for much longer than you may think. It's not caused due to the relaunch and Superman's marriage being dissolved, although that is something that does contribute to me thinking about it a lot. It's just a topic that I always found interesting in the comic book medium, and also a topic that I find interesting in general, and how marriage is handled in the real world. So when I do this video and I try to convey my opinions on marriage in comic books, what I hope to do is tell you guys whether or not I believe marriage in comic books can work or cannot work. What characters marriage works for and what characters marriage doesn't work for. And even if a character does not work with the concept of marriage, I will try my best to convey maybe a possible situation where it might work. Maybe where the character can be in a relationship, in a marital situation, and it still work for the character. Because there's a lot of characters in the DC universe that, although I don't like to admit it, will probably never get married because of who that character is in their persona. But I also believe that there are situations where the character can work in a marital situation. Not all marriages have to be the same. Some marriages can be drastically different from others. So I'm going to try my best to convey my opinions while at the same time giving you those situations. Before I actually get into talking about marriage in comic books, I want to talk about marriage in real life and my opinions on it. I'm a big supporter of marriage. I think it's a beautiful concept where two people can come together and be married, and two people that are in love with each other. I don't believe marriage is for everyone. There's a lot of people I know out there that don't care for marriage. They think of it as just a piece of paper, and that's all well and good. I have a couple of friends that are a couple that live together, but they're never going to get married. They feel as though they shouldn't be defined by a paper, and that's quite all right. Me personally, I believe it's something that is a signification to signify your union between you and your significant other, your partner. And I think it is the ultimate representation of a commitment to that partner and your love for that partner. So I'm a big supporter of marriage, but at the same time, I also believe if you don't want to get married, if you just want to be in a relationship with someone, that's quite alright. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm not one of those people that think, you have to be married in order to be in a relationship with someone, because I've seen a lot of people be in relationships for a long time. I know people that have been in relationships for 20 plus years that have never got married, and they're perfectly happy. So I support marriage, but I also believe marriage is not for everyone. I also believe marriage should be accessible to everyone, and it should not be a religious institutional concept. I believe marriage should be accessible to people that are straight and people that are gay. I'm a big supporter of equality, for lack of a better term. I believe everyone is equal, whether you're man or woman, whether you're black or white, whether you're gay or straight. So I find it quite disturbing that not everywhere homosexual couples can get married. So I believe that anyone and everyone, if they have a significant other, a partner, should have the ability to get married. We're in an age where religion doesn't play as much of a factor, or should not play as much of a factor, in social and governmental politics. Whether or not that's the case is up in the air. Obviously, religion still affects things, and I'm not bashing religion. Religion is religion, but I think people should also have the rights to be married, whether they're religious or not religious, or whether they're gay or straight. It should be an option for everyone. So, in closing, for my own personal opinions on marriage in general, I'm a big supporter of it. I will get married one day. I plan to with my girlfriend. Um, I believe anyone and everyone should have the ability to get married. And I also believe that marriage isn't necessarily for everyone. Some people do not care for marriage, and that's perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's kind of like whatever floats your boat. So with that said, let me get into my opinions on comic books and marriage in general. Seeing, I always consider myself a hopeless romantic in a sense. As much as I try to be that tough guy, I love a good love story. I have to admit it. I can't lie. I love a good love story. I love it when two individuals get together and that there's romance between them. So whenever I go into any fictional media, I always, I do pay attention to that stuff. Say if I'm watching a movie and there's maybe a spark of romance between two characters, I'm always interested to see where it goes. Doesn't necessarily mean that I think the characters should get together and be, happily married forever and ever, but I'm always interested in romances in a fictional media. With that said, I find comic books to be one of the most perplexing fictional medias when it comes down to marriage, because in movies and in television shows you can have couples and partners get together and be married, or just in general be together, and it would not be considered detrimental to their character development, because chances are a TV show on average lasts for about 5 to 7 seasons, a healthy TV show, and a movie is its own self-contained story, and even that a movie franchise can only last for so long. But comic books, these characters have been around for 70 plus years, and they're probably going to be around for much longer. These are characters that are constantly being told in different stories. And one of the concepts that some people, not all, but some people have is that marriage often ties a character down. It prevents them from telling stories that the writers want to tell. This was a case that I believe Joe Quesada had with Spider-Man. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm not a Marvel fan. I kind of look over the fence sometimes to see what's happening, but my information on Marvel in general is pretty weak. But from what I've heard from the fandom and from just people in general, that Joe Quesada wanted Spider-Man to go back to being single, to being back to being, kind of in that love triangle thing, or just being Peter Parker that, is an eligible bachelor. He felt as though the marriage was holding the character back. And a lot of people disagree with that. And recently with DC, probably the biggest DC relationship of all, which is Superman and Lois Lane's marriage, is going to be dissolved. It's been revealed in a few panels that Lois is now dating someone new. So we can assume that Lois and Clark never got married in general. Their marriage just never happened. This is something that DC said that they wanted to do, and that they're trying to handle the best they can, because in general, they want to give Superman a very alien, alone, isolated complex. His family's going to die very early on, before he even becomes Superman, so Mom, Pa are gone. And Lois will not be part of his life, because they want Superman to have that outsider-looking-in complex. So that's their main reason for removing Superman's and Lois Lane's marriage from continuity. That, and they said that it's a relationship that they want to re-examine through different eyes. Now, in general, my opinion is this, is that marriage in comic books can work. However, it's something that needs to be handled differently than marriages in television, books, movies, or anything else for that matter. I also believe that marriages can only open more story ideas than if you had a character not be in marriage. One of the concepts is that you can't tell as many stories if a character is married. They're tied down. But at the same time, there's so many stories that you can tell with the character in a marriage. And if you think about it, the marriage doesn't have to be a huge factor when it comes down to the character's stories. An example of this is, and although this isn't the best example, Barry Allen during the Bronze Age, there was a lot of stories with him and his wife Iris. However, she was not a deciding factor in every story, and she was kind of thrown to the backside, and he would just go off and do his superhero missions. Even recently, with the rebirth of Barry Allen, Iris has been in the comics, but she's kind of been more to the back. And it hasn't held him back from being the Flash. It hasn't held the writers back from telling good Flash stories. So I do not believe in the concept that having a marriage hold characters back at all. Is there some stories you cannot tell? Of course. You can't have a story where Superman goes flying around and has a relationship with Wonder Woman, or is in a love triangle between Wonder Woman and Lois Lane. That story can't be told. But at the same time, it's really, in my opinion, again, it's just my opinion, I think it's really just, love stories that can't really be told. Relationship-based stories. Maybe the mentality of how the person lives, but really it's just relationship stories that I think can't be told. Everything else, I don't think a marriage holds the character back. And it's particularly disappointing and upsetting for me that Superman and Lois Lane's marriage is getting dissolved, because I think in comic books, again, I don't read Marvel, so I don't know what's going on over there, I think they had probably the most stable and best relationship of all. Both are fiercely independent characters that support each other through thick and thin. Both characters foil off each other very well, and they create this strong marriage with each other. It's a marriage of understanding, compromise, love, and just in general, it was a beautiful marriage. I think that taking away that marriage is taking away a big piece of what Superman is. Even if you were to restart the marriage and retell the story, it's still not the same. I think the marriage with Superman and Lois should have been kept together. This is just my opinion, but I don't think Lois at all was hurting Superman's comic. I don't think the marriage at all was hurting Superman's comic. And on the subject of Superman, I was in a discussion with someone, and they said that it wasn't necessarily Superman that was getting hurt in the comic, but rather it was Lois Lane that was getting hurt, because her status as an independent reporter and a secondary character was lessened to a great degree. And I don't necessarily agree with that. First of all, Lois Lane is not the star of the comic. She is a supporting character. And being a supporting character means that you are not the most important character in the story. That means that your role, at most, is minor. It is a secondary character. Lois Lane can be a deep, in-depth character with a lot of potential, but it's a Superman comic. It is a comic about Superman doing Superman things. Lois Lane can be in there for supportive reasons for Superman, maybe to find a news story, but it is not Lois Lane's comic. It is a comic of Superman. Very much if Wonder Woman was to get married to, say, Stephen Trevor. It is not Stephen Trevor's comic. When I read Wonder Woman, I am not interested in Stephen Trevor going off and saving the world. I'm interested in Wonder Woman's character saving the world. While I'm still interested in Stephen Trevor, he is a supporting character. His role is a supporting character. If Lois Lane was that important of a character that really needs so much development, then you should have given her her own comic. And the comic wouldn't last. As great of a character Lois Lane is, that comic probably wouldn't last. And even then, if in that comic, she can still be married and still be Lois. I'm a little rambling on here, but the Superman marriage being dissolved is something that I greatly disagree with, because it was a beautiful marriage, and again, it's a testament to the fact that marriages can work in comic books. Superman's comic hasn't been selling, but it's not because of Lois Lane and Clark Kent's marriage. It's just because the comic hasn't been good. Plain, flat, simple. Superman needs a new direction. He needs a facelift. He needs to be modernized. There's no denying that. That's one thing I'm glad about with the relaunch. But dissolving their marriage was unnecessary. So as you guys can see from my rambling, I'm a big supporter of marriage in comic books. Not all characters in comic books will work for marriage, but in general, I think comic book characters can be married and be successful in their own particular books. A great example of this would be Aquaman. Aquaman and Mera work so well together. And when Mera is not needed and you want to focus on Aquaman, what do? Mera goes off. She stays at home. She has her own little adventure on the side. Maybe you just don't see her in this issue. She's not a factor. It's all well and good. But their marriage works perfectly fine together. For the most part. I mean, their child died, they got a divorce, she betrayed him a few times. But they stayed married, they're married right now, and per the relaunch, I believe they will continue being married. No, very little information has been given on that, but I'm pretty sure they will stay married. We'll just have to see. But that's a great example of how marriage can work, and it can be a lot of drama in it, because Mera and Aquaman's marriage is not perfect. If you read Aquaman, if you read JLA, if you read anything with Aquaman, Mera and him are like this. But it's interesting, and in the end of the day, they're still together, and they're still beautiful together. So, I do believe that marriage can work in comics. I believe that the excuse that it holds characters back from stories is a lousy excuse. Because it actually opens even more doors to the character. And if you were to make a character married and then to divorce them or to separate them or to retcon the history, it only brings the character back. It takes the character away. It puts the character in the past. The character development is lessened. The character's growing process is shortened, and they kind of revert back to what they were before the marriage. In all of comic books, there's only one marriage that I've supported not being together, and that was Black Canary and Green Arrow. Mostly because Black Canary works best when she's not tied down to Green Arrow. It's kind of funny because I'm actually arguing against that, but also because Green Arrow is an asshole. And Green Arrow I do not like. I like the concept of Green Arrow, but he is not a good person. He is not a good person to his friends, his family, or in general. He tries to be a hero, but he is not a good person. I really want to love Ollie, but he's not a good person, and, you know, Black Canary deserves better. Putting all that aside, I do believe that most marriages in comic books can work. So, without continuously repeating myself, let's go into some of the people that will work and will not work in comic books. And if they don't necessarily work in comic books, what possibly could make them work? Well, let's take the Justice League in general. It's kind of funny because on my desktop I have the Justice League poster, so I'll just take a look at them. Let's start things off with the big S, Superman. Superman, as I stated before, I believe that he works well in a marriage. I believe having Lois as a supporting character, having it be a character that, you know, he doesn't have to be super around, someone that he can just let go and be Clark around, I think the marriage works out well. Lois doesn't need to be in every story. She doesn't need to be in every single situation. She can show up from time to time, and it doesn't hurt Lois from being a reporter. I think the Lois and Clark relationship is beautiful, and it's a relationship that works very nicely in comics. Again, this is all my opinion. Wonder Woman. Oddly enough, Wonder Woman is one of the characters that I do not believe should be in a marriage, at least not right now. A relationship, yes, but marriage, not so much. Mostly because Wonder Woman is such a unique character that it takes a certain male character, or even female character if you wanted to go that route, but it takes a particular character for Wonder Woman to work in a relationship. The two closest people I've ever seen Wonder Woman be in a relationship with, in any form in the comic books that have had any possibility, has been Stephen Trevor and Batman. And Batman right off the bat will not work. Why? Because Batman's in his own comic, and as much as they have chemistry with each other, it's just not going to work. It's doomed to fail from the beginning. So Stephen Trevor, as of now, is probably the closest thing we get to Wonder Woman being in a relationship and possibly a marriage, and it has happened before. But I think Wonder Woman on a whole is best single, and I think that's the way DC wants to continue it. I heard rumors that they might want to hook them up with Superman. But if Wonder Woman was to have a relationship, it would be with Stephen Trevor. I think their relationship would work. It would take a lot of writing expertise, but I think their relationship would work if Stephen Trevor was more involved in the comic. Kind of the opposite of Lois Lane. Because, see, Wonder Woman's such a dominant presence, and Stephen Trevor needs to be shown on equal footing with Wonder Woman in some way, shape, or form. Wonder Woman's comic is about equality more than feminism, although it's heavily in feminism. Wonder Woman's message is men and women are created equal. Stephen Trevor needs to be shown as competent as an individual as Wonder Woman. He doesn't need to be saved every 5 minutes. Stephen Trevor, a great format for this would be Wonder Woman's a strong superhero type. Ambassador, diplomat, warrior. Stephen Trevor is kind of a spy, an agent of the U.S. You know, he's great at espionage. He's great at getting out of situations. He's a thinker, kind of, you know, a strategic individual. Wonder Woman is still the star of the show. She's still very much the more powerful of the two, but Stephen Trevor can be painted off as a competent individual who doesn't need to be saved by Wonder Woman. Which brings me to the next one, Batman. Batman, I always teeter. See, it's tough because Batman's my favorite character. In the deepest reaches of my heart, I don't think Batman, that DC will probably ever marry Batman because they want to keep Batman in that loner status. And whether or not that's best for the comic, I think I'll leave up to you guys. I think a marriage between Batman is possible. There's been a few candidates that work, and I will list them off. But the best possible candidate is Catwoman. Why? I'll tell you. Catwoman and Batman can be in a marriage, or even just simply in a relationship. They don't have to be by each other's side all the time. They are two fiercely independent people. Catwoman can go off and do Catwoman stuff, and Batman can go off and do Batman stuff. At the end of the day, they can go back home together, but they don't have to be involved in each other's business. Catwoman is also one of the few people that have two qualities that other female characters don't have when in a relationship with Batman. More so than Silver St. Cloud, more so than Vicky Vale, more so than Diana, more so than anyone. And what is that quality? One is Catwoman understands Batman's mission. She understands the concept of Batman. She understands who he is. She understands that he will fight this mission to the day he dies, and that eventually one day he dies. She understands that, and she's okay with it. Second thing is the reason why Batman is hard to get in relationships with is because, well, to be honest, he's kind of a screwed up individual. He has major social problems. But to be fair, this is one of the qualities Catwoman has that makes her so well with Batman, is she's just as screwed up. It's kind of funny. Catwoman and Batman are so messed up that they work well together in that area. So I believe if you were to get Batman in a relationship with anyone, Catwoman would be the choice, the first choice. Because she understands Batman's mission, she doesn't have to be in Batman's business. You don't even need to have her in the comic. Their relationship can be told through the Catwoman comic, or it can just be there. You don't need to have every panel have Catwoman on it. And in addition to that, they're just so screwed up with each other. They work well with each other. Will it happen? I really pull for it. There's been so many opportunities, but I don't think DC wants to do it because, again, they want to keep that loner status. But even then, if you think about it, the loner status is such a horrible thing to give Batman. Because out of everyone in the DC universe, Batman has the biggest family of them all. He has 3 sons that he adopted, Tim, Jason, and Dick. He has a biological son, in theory, which is Damian. He has an adopted daughter in Cassandra Cain. He's kind of a surrogate big brother to Barbara Gordon. He has the surrogate father in Alfred Pennyworth, and he has the surrogate brother and sister in Wonder Woman and Superman, although those two kind of are off to the side. Batman has some of the most deepest and strongest relationships in all of comics, despite being a loner. I think that concept is a horrible one to give Batman because he isn't a loner. He works alone, but he has tons of relationships and the largest family in comic books for one character. Next would be Barry Allen, The Flash. And I'll even throw Wally in there, but I think The Flash works very well in a relationship. I like Iris's and Barry's relationship because Iris is a very much supporting character. She does not have to be the second biggest character in his book. She's just there. She is a character that he can have dialogue with. She's a character that he can go home and have a relationship with, but in the end of the day, she doesn't get involved in his superhero business as much as, say, Lois does, because Lois always gets her head way too in deep with Superman. But their marriage works so well because she's not a huge character. Iris is just there. She's his wife, and she works for what she does. She is made for Barry. She is not made for Iris. And that sounds pretty bad, but that's why the marriage works so well. They tailored the characters that the individual is married to that particular character or individual. Iris was tailored to be married to Barry, and she's tailored perfectly. She's an interesting character, but they didn't make Iris to be Iris. They made her to be Barry Allen's wife. Similarly, Aquaman is another character whose marriage works so well, but on a completely different scale than everyone else. His marriage is always an up and down roller coaster. You know, they're together, they're happily together, but then their son died, and there's a tear between their relationships. They stick together, but eventually Aquaman is kicked out of Atlantis, is no longer king of the Obsidian Age. Mira betrays him, but you find out that she's being possessed. They get back together, but then you find out that, you know, he gets turned into a sea squid monster and he dies. Then they get back together, but then you find out that she's going to betray him. There's a lot of up and downs with that relationship, but it's an interesting relationship that works. The two love each other. Is it a perfect relationship? God, no. And nor does relationships have to be perfect in comic books, but it's a relationship that works so well. On to Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan is a character that I'm kind of up in the air with. Hal Jordan works well with someone like Carol Ferris, and I think if those two got together, they would probably work well with each other because she's high octane like him. He's not flying off and leaving her in the dust. She's right there with him. But at the same time, Hal Jordan's kind of a playboy, more than other people. He has multiple relationships, and he feels comfortable in the role of being single. So as of now, I say Hal is probably a character that's safer to keep out of a relationship. But if you were to put him in a relationship, I think Carol Ferris would be the best because, assuming she keeps the Star Sapphire ring, she can keep up with him. They can have team-ups every once in a while, and they both have a high-octane life. They understand each other. They understand their ups and downs. And I think understanding between characters is a huge thing. Lois understands Clark. Selina understands Bruce. And Carol understands Hal. So I think that relationship could work, but as of now, I think DC is going to keep it single. Cyborg, I don't know what's going to happen with him after the reboot, but I could always see Cyborg hitching up with someone. I can't really comment too much because Cyborg, I think, is going to change drastically history-wise, maybe not character-wise, but history-wise when it comes down to the reboot. As for other comic book characters, you know, there's some characters that work well in relationships, like Wally West works well in a marriage. Another example is Jade or Kyle Rayner. They're characters that work well in relationships. But there's certain characters, as much as I would love them to get together with someone, probably work best single. Dick Grayson, I really want him and Barb to get together. But they work well single because they have that chance to kind of be off and do their own thing. Eventually they should get together, but as of now they work well single. Donna is the character that works well single. She should not. I don't think tying her down. I hate using that word. I don't think putting her in a relationship right now is the best idea. But at the same time, Hawkman is a character that works well in relationships. Hawkman and Shahira, they're just so good together as Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Adam is a character that has an interesting relationship with his ex-wife that's still in continuity. But, you know, they kind of have an interesting relationship, and they could work well. So there's characters that obviously are better single, but that doesn't mean that and this is something I want to get across. Let me give you this as my final analysis. Marriages in comic books can work for everyone. Just because a character works well single and probably feels more comfortable in that role does not mean that they can't be put in a situation where they're in a marriage or in a partnership of some sort and not work. Just because Batman works well as a single man does not mean he can't be in a relationship with Catwoman or even be married to Catwoman and not have it work. Same could be said with Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson's great as a single man. I mean, Dick Grayson's the biggest whore in the DC universe. He has sex with so many people. But the general concept is Dick Grayson is a character that could work so well in a relationship too. But he also fits the role of being single too. There's nothing wrong with being single, and nor do I say everyone in the comic book universe should get hitched. That's something I want to get across. I don't think everyone should get married. That would just be silly. But I think the concept of marriage is something that can work in comic books. It just needs to be tailored differently than in movies and also in books or television, because these are characters that are constantly going to have their histories be told, constantly going to be written, and they're going to be around for decades and decades and decades. I've been rambling on for nearly a half hour now, but I've always found this issue to be a interesting issue. Um, and I always found marriage in comic books to be a touchy one for comic book writers because some comic book writers don't know how to handle it or they're unsure if they can handle it correctly. But on the whole, like I said, I believe marriages can work in comics and the excuses that they give are horrible. Horrible. Characters should only grow, they shouldn't digress. Period. Plain, flat, and simple. Growth is good. Digression, not good. Like Speedy, Red Arrow, Roy Harper, getting back on drugs. That's not growth. That's deterioration. That's digressing the character. This really ruin not the character's going backwards. I heard Tony Stark's going to become an alcoholic again. That's digression. The character already dealt with that stuff. He's moved on. Or, for example, Willow from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She's a character that had a dark side to her, but they keep on bringing that back. Move on. Same thing, that's the concept between characters. If you take away a marriage, you're only digressing the character. If you're preventing the character from getting into a marriage, you're preventing possible opportunities. But again, that's just my opinion, and I don't know if I formulated it as the best I could. I hope I did, but we'll just have to see. But yes, with that said, I would love to hear your opinions on marriage and also your opinions on comic books and marriage. Do you think it works? Do you think it not works? So with that said, I'm going to end this video here. This is Andrew saying peace out for now.